Welcome everyone, this is Kerjims channel. Now we are back to our new episodes of True Semi-Running Champions and Comparison, featured by Wild League of Legend versus the Mobile Legend Bang Gang. But before that, please like and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the bell icon so you will be notified to our new next episode video. Let's do this!
There is one more champion we passed by during the Shadow Isles for lack of story, but because he is one of the reasons the Curse of Ruination exists, let's have a look at the story of Thresh. Long time ago, during age all but forgotten, the man who would be later known as Thresh was once a member of an order devoted to gathering and protecting knowledge. The masters of this order tasked him with guarding a hidden underground vault filled with dangerous and corrupted magical artifacts. Thresh was incredibly strong-willed and methodical, which made him well suited for such work. The vault Thresh guarded was buried deep beneath the citadel at the center of the Blessed Isles, protected by runic sigils, arcane locks, and potent wards. Spending such time in the presence of dark spells began to affect Thresh as the magic sought out his natural dark side. For years, the relics preyed on his insecurities, taunting him with his deepest fears and feeding his bitterness. Thresh's hatred surfaced through the acts of cruelty, as his talent for exploiting vulnerability bloomed. He slowly tore pages out of a living book, binding it back together when it was all but spent. He scratched the glass of a mirror bound to the memory of an ancient mage, trapping the man in darkness, only to polish it anew and repeat. Just as a secret wants to be told, a spell wants nothing more than to be cast, and Thresh denied this each day. He would start to recite an incantation, then let the words tickle off his tongue, halting just before the last syllable. He became exquisitely skilled at covering all evidences of his cruelty, such that no one in the order suspected he was nothing other than a disciplined guard. Over time, the vault has grown so vast that no one knew its contents as completely as Thresh, and the lesser artifacts faded from the order's memory, as did Thresh himself. He resented that he had to hide his work. Everything under his watch was evil or corrupted in some way. Why shouldn't he be free to do as he would? The vault held many peculiar magical artifacts, but no people, until one day when a chained man was dragged into the sunken catacombs. He was a warlock who had infused his body with raw sorcery, which would give him the power to regenerate his flesh, no matter how grievous the wound. Thresh was delighted at his new prisoner, a being who could feel the full range of human suffering but would not perish, a toy he could torment for years to come. He started methodically separating the warlock's skin from his flesh with a hook, and used his chains to lash and tear the opened wound until it healed. He started wearing the chains as he patrolled the vault, reveling in the warlock's fear at the long dragging sound of his approach. With more than enough charges to his torment in the vault, Thresh became even more distanced from the order above. He began to take his meals in the underground chamber lit by a single lantern, rarely emerging from the catacombs. His skin became pale from the lack of sunlight, and his face became gaunt and hollow. Members of the order avoided him, and when a series of mysterious disappearances plagued the order, none thought to investigate Thresh's lair. When the disaster known as the Ruination struck, magical shockwaves claimed the lives of all who lived on the Isles and transformed them into the undead. While others screamed in anguish, Thresh reveled in the ruin. He rose from this cataclysm as a spectral abomination, but unlike many who have passed into the Shadow World, Thresh did not lose his identity. More than that, his taste for cruel torture and ability to target weakness was only greater. He relished the chance to continue his cruelty without fear of reprisal, unfettered by the limits of mortality. As a wraith, Thresh could torment the living and the dead endlessly, delighting in their despair before claiming their soul for an eternity of suffering. Thresh now seeks only particular victims, only the most clever and resilient, and those with a strong will. His greatest joy comes from tormenting his victims until they lose any last glimmer of hope, before facing the inevitable hook of his chains. The following story shows us the hunt for one of his victims. A horrible scraping of metal chains drifted over the field. Outside, an unnatural fog rendered the moon and the stars all but invisible, and the regular hum of insects fell silent. Thresh approached a ruined house. He raised his lantern, not to see his surroundings, but to look inside the glass. The interior of the lantern resembled a nightscape with its thousands of tiny green glowing orbs. They buzzed frantically as if trying to escape Thresh's gaze. His mouth twisted into a grin. Each of the lights was precious to him. Behind the door, a man whimpered. Thresh sensed his pain and was drawn to it. He knew the man suffering like an old friend. Thresh had only appeared to the man once, decades ago. But since then, the spectre had taken everyone the man held dear. From his favorite horse to his mother, brother, and recently a man who had become a close confidant. The spectre made sure to let his victim know these were not natural deaths. He wanted the man to know who caused each loss. The spirit passed through the door, scraping his chains as they dragged behind him. The walls were damp with years of grime. The man looked even worse. His hair long and matted, his skin covered in scabs, angry and raw from clawing. He wore what had once been fine velvet clothing, but were now little more than torn tattered rags. The man shrank from the sudden green glow, covering his eyes. He shook violently, backing away into the corner. Please not you," he whispered. "Long ago I claimed you as mine." Thresh's voice creaked and stretched, as if he had not spoken for an age. "It is time I collect." "I'm dying," the man said, his voice barely audible. "If you're here to kill me, you'd best hurry." He made an effort to look at Thresh directly. Thresh stretched his mouth wide. "Your death is not my desire." He set the glass door of his lantern slightly open. Strange sounds came from within, a mixture of screams. The man did not react, not at first. So many screams emerged that they blended together like scraping glass shards. But his eyes widened in horror as he heard the voices he recognized. He heard his mother, his brother, his friend, and finally the sound he dreaded most. His children, wailing as if being burned alive. "What have you done?" he screamed. He scrambled for something to throw, a broken chair, and threw it at Thresh with all his strength. It passed through the spectral armor stone, and Thresh laughed. The man ran at Thresh, eyes wild with fury. The spectre's hooked chains whipped out like striking snakes. The barbed hook struck the mortal's chest, cracking ribs and piercing his heart. The man fell to his knees, face twisted in delicious agony. "I'll have to keep them safe," the man cried. Blood gurgled from his mouth. Thresh wrenched his chains hard. For a moment, the man did not move. Then the ripping began. Like a rough spun sheet being slowly torn, he was excruciatingly pulled from himself. His body twitched violently and the blood sprayed along the walls. "Now we begin," said Thresh. He pulled the escaping soul, pulsing brightly from the end of the chain, and trapped him within the lantern. The man's hollow corpse collapsed as Thresh departed. Thresh followed the curling black mist away from the cottage with his glowing lantern held high. Only after Thresh was gone and the fog dissipated did the insects resume their nightly chorus and stars once again filled the sky. And that was the story of Thresh. That was the last member of the Shadow Isles for now. I believe I have now covered every single champion from the Shadow Isles in one way or another. So now we know the full history of the Blessed Isles.
Faramis has a good set of area of effect, shield resurrection, and crowd control skills. Our alchemist, Faramis is a support hero. I consider Faramis as an offensive ultra hyper omega level support, since his second skill deals burst area of effect damage. Not only that, his ultimate skill could resurrect you non-stop upon dying, and make you a vengeful spirit for a few moments. Now, let me share some tips and tricks on how to use Faramis based on my experience. I will also teach you some combos and techniques on the latter part of this boot camp. But before that, let me explain his skills one by one for further understanding. Faramis' passive, Vicious Retrieval, makes units that die near Faramis leave their souls behind at the spot of their death. Faramis can retrieve the souls and recover some health points with it. Not only that, each soul retrieved by Faramis will shorten his resurrecting time. But do take note that the souls retrieved are lost after his death. Faramis' first skill, Shadow Stampede, lets Faramis counter the shadow state that reduces his movement speed and physical and magic defense. On this state, he leaves a mark of shadow to enemy heroes that comes into contact with him. The contact to enemy heroes will deal certain magic damage. Upon quitting this state, all the enemies with the mark of shadow will be pulled to Faramis. And they will also receive a certain amount of magic damage. He restores health points after this state for each enemy hero's pull. Faramis' second skill, Ghost Burst Burst, lets Faramis extract a burst of evil spirits in a fan-shaped area in front of him. The outburst deals a certain amount of magic damage. The burst then splits to deal extra magic damage. This splits up to 3 times on enemy heroes, and up to 1 on non-hero units. Faramis' ultimate skill, called Alter, lets Faramis summon an altar that lasts for 10 seconds. Allied heroes who dies within the altar will immediately resurrect. They obtain 80 to 100% health depending on its level and 100% attack. The resurrected body will only last up to 10 seconds. But the good thing is, you can be resurrected more than once as long as the altar still exists in the battlefield. There are so many items that you can buy for Faramis. You can either focus on magic damage items, or items that give you high health points and cooldown reduction. For me, I choose to buy items such as magic damage, health points, defense to Faramis, and slowing effects to the enemies. As for starting item, you can consider buying Wizard Boots. Wizard Boots grants additional health points and movement speed. Its unique passive grants gold for every assist you make. Buying this will help you farm more gold with every assist. You can consider buying Clock of Destiny. This grants you magic damage, health points, and mana. Its unique passive grants additional health points and magic attack every 30 seconds, permanently. This stacks up to 10 times only. When the maximum stack of 10 has been reached, the hero will receive extra 5% magic damage and additional 300 mana. You might want to consider Dominance Ice. This item grants mana, physical defense, and critical chance reduction. Its unique effect grants 10% cooldown reduction. Its unique passive lowers the movement and attack speed of nearby enemy heroes. The bonus mana is also good for the Lightning Truncheon's unique passive damage. Buying magic items such as Lightning Truncheon will help you deal more burst damage. This item gives you magic power, mana, and cooldown reduction. Its unique passive will deal magic damage to your target and 2 other enemies when you use a skill. This unique passive has a short cooldown. You can consider buying Ice Queen 1. This item gives additional magic power, magical life steal, mana, and movement speed. Its unique passive lets you slow down an enemy when your skill hits them. The slowing effect lasts for a few seconds and stacks up to 2 times. Lastly, you can consider Blood Rings. This grants you magic power and health points. Its unique passive adds health points for every point of magic power added to your hero. The additional health points can help you survive into your fight. The item build for Faramis really depends on the enemy's mana. So make sure to read each item's description so you can adapt in game.